Diversity and inclusion are very important to me personally, but also in my role as head of Europe at the London Stock Exchange. So I have a second hat as co-chair of the Women Inspired Network in the UK for the London Stock Exchange Group. And what it means to me is equal opportunities for women and people from diverse backgrounds in terms of promotion, in terms of career opportunities, obviously equal pay, and also making sure that around any table where decisions are made, we have a diverse representation of people. And that of course translates into better decision making, better risk management, and just better performance of the company overall. I also deal with quite a lot of businesses in tech. So companies that are planning, for example, to go public on our markets, or companies that are seeking fundraising, different types of fundraising in London. And it's very important for me personally, but also as a representative for the London Stock Exchange, to support female entrepreneurs and female founders. And actually I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later today.
Oh, cool. I'd love to listen to it.
Yeah.
So I'm with Maersk Growth, heading up the global venture client. So we deal also with a lot of founders and companies. I think it's always a balance to see how much can you interfere in the operations of a company as when it comes to things like diversity, inclusion, etc.
Yeah.
But of course it's important that we take a stance on this as investors and venture client managers. So we do try to have a dialogue about it with our portfolio company and companies and the suppliers that we deal with in the startup community, because it is extremely male dominated still. So definitely some work to be done there. If I look at it from a more internal Maersk perspective, we have a lot of attention on the topic from the top level, CEO level, on diversity, equity and inclusion, because without the inclusion part it means nothing.
Exactly.
So I see many initiatives. We have a Power Women network that's getting started. We have direct attention from our top CEO, Søren Skov. He's personally engaged in this agenda. I've actually worked at Maersk before, about 20-30 years ago, and back then it was a completely different experience to come into the headquarters where I sometimes visit. Back then it was all white Danish guys. Very nice guys, but white and Danish, all of them, right? Except a couple of us. And now when I come in, it's so different. There's people of all colors and ages and genders and even different ways to dress and whatever. So it's a lot more diverse now, and this is such a pleasure to see, and it really is very visible when you haven't been around for a couple of decades to see how that change really is happening as we speak. And I think this is particularly important in the technology part of the company, because that is still very male dominated, just that the company as a whole has many genders and colors represented means a lot to also people joining in a technical role. So.
Exactly. It's very similar for me because I joined my company over 12 years ago, and it was very different. It looked very different, and I felt many times the only woman in the room, definitely the only woman of color in the room for on many occasions. So seeing what it is now, and under our leadership as well, who are also very, very focused on diversity and inclusion, it's really heartening to see that. I think what's important for us is to not lose sight, as you say, about inclusion, the inclusion bit, because you can hire all different people, but if you're not treating them right, if you're not promoting them, then there is no point, right? So I agree with you there. And from the perspective of technology sector, I think what we are seeing is that majority of the funding still goes to the male founders, especially white male founders, and this is actually the same across Europe and the US. So, and it's not for the lack of female founders. It's actually interesting to see that there are lots of ideas, lots of pitches coming in, but then people who get the investment are still not diverse. So, I'm just interesting to see how that continues. But from my perspective, I try and engage as many female founders as I can, and meetings at the TechBBQ conference, organizing our own conferences as well in London and in Copenhagen. So really pushing that point, I think, is very important.
Yeah, I think it's very important to support from a 360-degree
Yeah.
angle on this, right? So not
Yeah.
just from the management, that's of course important, but
Yes.
also the
Working
mid-management
level,
levels
yeah,
need
yeah.
to understand, especially maybe the people that don't represent a minority needs to
Exactly.
be on board. And this is, to me, the
Yeah.
tricky part, right?
Yeah.
Because some of these guys are fine, right?
Yeah.
In their role, and it's like, oh, what's the problem? You know, I promoted
Yeah.
the best person for the job, right?
Exactly,
And
yeah.
And then what does that mean? What does
Yeah.
that look like? It looks
Yeah.
like my friends, right?
Yeah.
And then we have a little bit of the trouble. So it's great to be able to
Yeah.
support from all different angles.
Exactly.
And we also see events like TechBBQ and others sometimes issuing special tickets for female founders, etc.
Oh,
to
really?
try to
Oh, that's
promote
really
that.
great.
I don't know if we did
Yeah.
it this year, but we have done it in the past
Yeah.
to get the ratio in a
Yeah.
bit of a more balanced situation,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So I think there's also at point this year we have more representation on the stages than ever.
Yeah.
So really good ratio this year of females, males, Danish, international
Exactly.
ethnicities, etc.
Yes,
So
exactly.
that's also super important at events like TechBBQ. So another interesting topic is the quiet leaving. That is sort of a semi-recent term that's been coined in this context. So maybe if you can talk a little bit about your perspective on that, but also briefly explain what does it mean, quiet leaving? What is it?
Well, everyone actually is now talking about quiet quitting or quiet leaving. So, quiet quitting is when the new generation of workers actually stop trying that hard. You know, maybe you and I are from a slightly older generation where we would throw everything at our job, work, 14, 15, 16 hours, pull in 100-hour weeks and all of that. And I think the new thinking is that actually, we don't have to do it. So we do our job, we do it well, but that's it. And we have our time off. We have time off in the evening. We have our time off in weekends. And is it good or is it bad? So there is a debate. It's good for the well-being and the health, but is it good for companies? Quiet leaving is very similar, where you see a cohort of, for example, female founders in tech who are saying, actually, we are not getting the feedback and the support that we need. Do we need to maybe push back a little bit and not try as hard? But of course, it's actually not, from my perspective, it's dangerous because people are not incentivized. So I think quiet quitting or quiet leaving happens when people do not feel incentivized and valued enough.
Yeah.
And that's always a dangerous thing, isn't it?
Yes.
So we would love to actually keep up this passion in people, and especially when it comes to people of color and people from diverse backgrounds, because we need to have them, involved and continuing to be passionate about what they do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even if it provides more spare time, which it probably would, I still think to go to work every day unengaged, not with a sense of purpose of what you're doing, in the long run is not rewarding. I have had one or two jobs like this in my career, and I couldn't do it for more than a couple of months, and then it's really draining your energy. So I don't think the two necessarily are mutually exclusive. I think you can still have work-life balance to the extent that you prefer, but still be engaged and not leave quietly. But it is definitely a topic and something that needs to be, I think, tackled from a management level, a very senior management level.
And in the area of fundraising as well, taken into account by private equity, VCs, right? All the sources of funding, where they definitely have to always keep in mind, how are we supporting diverse tech founders, and what does our portfolio look like? Are all the founders in our portfolio again looking the same?
Exactly.
So how do you see the future of diversity in tech going forward?
I think on the positive side, I do see it rising. I do see more diversity, at least at Maersk, in our technology interactions. Maybe it's a bit slower on the founder side, unfortunately. We need to definitely keep pushing. This is not at the finish line at all.
Definitely.
But it is going in a good direction, I think. I think that we have some good champions around, and an increased understanding at the very senior level that this is actually important for many reasons, especially in technology, beyond the individual and the results that diversity without question creates. Then there's also, especially when you talk about AI and machine learning, there is a risk that the algorithm itself might get extremely biased because it is developed by a certain segment, right?
Yes,
Typically
exactly.
white males, right?
Yeah.
And this is a problem when these technologies are used for decisions. Then we kind of escalate the problem very quickly. We've seen several examples of this happening when AI is taking over, and we need the diverse representation in the developers that create these algorithms. So I feel that it is important on very many levels, and we are moving too slow, but moving. So that's what do you think?
I agree. I think I'm actually I'm feeling optimistic. I do think we're moving in the right direction, but it'll take a lot of work from all of us. All of the stakeholders in the process, including the senior management, as you said, including investors, including people like us, and just to move the dial. And what's interesting is that what we don't want to see is making 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. Because I think during the pandemic that happened. Before the pandemic, you saw the increase in investment in female founders, and then it dropped during the pandemic. So we want, no matter the times, no matter how volatile the times are, just to keep that sharp focus on the supporting and promoting diverse talent.
Yes, I agree with that completely. Let's do it.
Let's do it.